Hi, I'm Peter Biondo, and I love this life.
We are in California, but clearly you don't have the Southern California accent. Tell me where you're from.
Yeah, and I don't have the Southern California weather either, Warren. I'm from Queens, New York, born and raised, and yeah, it's a different world everywhere you go. Every state feels like a different country right now. On this whole COVID deal has been different, to say the least.
Yes, very different. Coming out here, we've had to adapt with the masks and lots of other social distancing things, but you're right, you get to travel quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah, and I was able to see a lot of parts of the country recently. So the way New York reacted to to COVID was an aggressive, early, firm approach to knock it out. I mean, obviously it's the most populated area per square mile, and they did just that. It was tough that we were all sitting indoors, and I have 2 young children and with a lot of energy. So yeah, I saw that side of it. I saw the New York side of it. Now that seems to be, we're kind of profiting, so to speak, from being very disciplined during those times. And then we went to Galat, North Carolina, for our spring fling there just a few short weeks ago, and it was a little bit more, people were a little bit more, I'm not going to say they weren't as concerned, because everyone's concerned about their health, but it wasn't as tight as New York. And then here we are in California. We're racing well, I'm not racing, but I'm watching Kyle and Mike Rice and everyone put on a double divisional, Lucas Oil double divisional, where everyone has to wear a mask, walking outside and everything. But we're racing, and that's what's important.
It is important. And so with you, let's go back a little bit into your growing up and such. Have you always been from Queens? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, my wife Emily and I purchased a house that I was born and raised in, right on 68th Street in Queens, New York. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I was in Queens. I was born in Queens, which, by the way, is I won't say a stone's throw away, but let's put it this way: Emily and myself rode bicycles to Central Park, in the middle of center of Manhattan. So that's how close we are. We're basically 3 to 4 miles from Manhattan. Yeah, it's where I like it. I tried Jersey for a while. Nothing against New Jersey, but just New York feels like home.
One thing about this drag racing thing is it takes a lot of real estate and a lot of, you got to have a lot of space to be a part of this. How does a guy in Queens that's like wall to wall, or house to house, all on a block, it's all tight and confined, how do you pursue your habit of drag racing living in Queens?
Yeah, we had to be creative, and we learned it from my father, who he would have an open trailer, back it into the driveway. We had a driveway, fortunately. A lot of houses don't even have driveways in Queens. Back the car into the garage, and we would load it up and go racing on the weekends. But no, back then there was not the total homes, motorhomes. It was a different world. It was a station wagon, which was the grocery getter, which was also our street eliminator vehicle for my brother and I, where we cut our teeth in drag racing. And yeah, we hook it up to the trailer and go. So it was simple, but trying to live in Queens now and with the total homes and the bigger trailers and multi-cars and so on, the way it works is basically we would rent out a spot in Jersey or where there's more land, where we don't have to pay $10,000 a month to to store our racing operation. So that's what most people that live in Queens now that race, they'll have a place in Jersey that's kind of on the way to most tracks, a yard, something. But yeah, you don't keep it in Queens, not a motorhome and trailer. It won't last very long there anyway.
No, I wouldn't think so. So that's where you grew up. Mm-hmm. Your dad, yep. Sal
is my older brother, and I have an older sister as well. Yep.
Okay, and your dad is, who's your dad?
My dad is Sam.
Sam, okay.
Yep, which is short for, I don't know how, but for Saverio. So my grandfather was all started in Sicily, Saverio. Then my father was born in Sicily, also named Saverio. He didn't want to write it out; it was too long, so they changed it to Sam. My brother, they named him Saverio. They didn't want him to have to deal with writing it out. They changed it to Sal. I carried on the tradition and named my son Saverio.
And you're making him write it out.
He's writing it out, according to my wife, because I asked her a couple of weeks ago. I said, we shortening it? She goes, no, let's keep it. It's cool. So.
So tell me about growing up in a racing family. What was it like with your dad and with your brothers, or with your brother?
Yeah. So to start with, my father really, I mean, a lot of this story could be about my father. He is a really interesting and, how do I say this without me boasting about him too much? But he really was a hero in every sense of the word. So when I was born, my mother passed away a couple of days after I was born, and so here's my father, who moved over from Italy when he was younger, and had to make a living in as a single parent with a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. And that's saying a lot, especially now that I know how hard it is if you really care about children and you put your all into it. It's a full-time job. And so my father had his work cut out for him there, but did an outstanding job of providing for us, making it happen every which way, whether it was cutting corners, very frugal. So he raised us. He was a street racer when he was younger. He was in a gang called the Misfits, street racing. But it got dangerous, as street racing does, and they took it to the racetrack. And my father, along with a lot of other friends, Butch DiLorenzo, the late Butch DiLorenzo, who's like a second father to me, James Antoinette, there was a lot of racers in that area, and they all went to Englishtown and went to National Speedway in Long Island, and that's where I grew up, really. Grew up at the racetrack.
So tell me about your dad and how he made his living and how he raised the three of you.
Yeah, so he was as far as I can remember back, he was, at first, he was the Japanese beer, Kirin beer. He was a salesman for Kirin beer, so he would actually go to bars and restaurants in New York City area, in Manhattan, and he would have to pitch them why they should carry Kirin beer. He was doing that for a while. Then he got into a little bit of real estate, got his real estate license, and did some investing and stuff like that. He was very resourceful and smart, and street smart. He dropped out of high school, by the way. Never made it past second year of high school, but very street smart and very hard worker. So after Kirin beer, I'd say about 10 years with Kirin beer, then he went to, after a little bit of real estate, brings us towards more 1989-ish, and we were in college. I was in high school, graduating, and he just made it happen no matter what, Warren. He was, whether we were growing up, younger, he would bring us to the racetrack. He would race. He would have to have a babysitter for us, basically. And we would just be in the station wagon and waiting for him, and he was always there for us when he needed to be, and he always made it happen when he needed to be. That's there's a lot of stories. I mean, in New York, it was a different time. You ask, so I'll tell, right?
Right.
I mean, there was a time when he was very protective of us. So when, if anyone, he was extra protective of us, I think, because he was a single parent, and he was very, I guess he figured he had to fill a lot of shoes there as a parent. And I remember one time we were at Englishtown, and he was winning every single weekend, pretty much. I mean, he would, not only would he dominate, again, this is going to sound boastful, but he really is a hero in every sense of the word. He would let us sleep in, get to Englishtown without any time runs, just so we could sleep in, because we were, kids, and we would get there. He would win, 3 out of 4 weeks, usually. And the announcer, this is a pretty funny story, but this is a different time. The announcer wasn't Louis Bloom at the time, but it was, I forget his name, I believe he passed, but he called over the PA, my father. He accused him of cheating over the PA. And my father saw us there, and so we heard it, and I could see his face, and I just knew it was a time bomb ticking. I was about 10 years old at the time. The announcer then said, "All right, Super Pro to the lanes. Sam Biondo, that means you two," and something like, "Bring your cheater box with you," or something like it. He was way out of line. And obviously my father is, if everyone knew the story, the real, what my father really had to deal with racing, he was way under budget compared to everybody else. He was always the slower car looking over his shoulder, pure Pontiac motor. I mean, he was the type of guy we would stop at the gas station, fill half his fuel jug up with 93 octane and the other half with racing fuel, because he didn't want to spend it all on racing fuel. Ice, he wouldn't buy ice. He would buy we would take the milk cartons, fill it with water the night before in the freezer. That would be a block of ice I mean, he was very frugal. So there was definitely nothing fancy about his race car or over the top. But so he hears the announcer say that, and that was it. He just started making a mad dash to the tower. At this point, I think I was somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. I followed him up there. I didn't know what was going on. And walks into the tower, and the announcer's is talking, announcing the race, and my father just gives him a left hook, knocks him right off the chair, and that was that. And there was no lawsuits then. It was just a different time. If he was the type of guy, this was all growing up, whether a guy bumped him on the Long Island Expressway to be funny. He was always the type of guy who would stand up wasn't a big guy, but he had the respect of a big guy, because you could just tell he believed in what he believed what he stood for, and he was, a lot of those types of incidents happened growing up, and, fortunately no one ever got hurt.
Did it feel like a tough upbringing to you?
Yeah, it was, it was definitely, I didn't have anything obviously to compare it to, so I didn't know it was tough at the time, because my father provided for us and my family was close-knit and had a lot of friends. But now that I look back on it, as I got into my 30s, I realized that, it was tough, and there was times, you go to school and something as simple as the teacher would say, "As parents, make sure your mother and father come in. As parents-teacher conference tonight," and I would get embarrassed, because I was like the only one in the class that I felt anyway that didn't have a mother. It was just things like that those kind of situations would seem to happen over and over, that would make it tough. That I was felt a little bit of an outcast, and obviously you lose one parent, you're kind of worried more about losing your other parent than what's going to happen to you. So there's all of that stuff that I really didn't realize. I thought was kind of normal, but when I hit my 30s and now 40s, I realized that was different.
So how do you think that has shaped you now as an adult, with your own family, with your kids and your career moving forward? How do you think that upbringing has impacted how you turned out?
Yeah, that's a great question, because once I had kids of my own, Emily and myself, we have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old right now. It made me appreciate so much, first of all, about what my father had to deal with, for good or for bad, and it made me the man that made me obviously it was hard as a kid, but the man that made me was that same toughness that I saw in my father, that he would stand up for his family, that same hard work, that I would do anything for my family, stand in front of a bus, you know, all of that stuff that you hear that could sound kind of phony. It's real. When you become a parent, and when I became a parent, it's real. I do probably think about, like, or maybe worry a little about more than the average father does, about, like, what if something happens to one of us? Maybe because I'm starting to feel the pain that I went through with that, and my father and my family. But aside from that, I think it made me stronger and be able to handle a lot of tough situations that life deals you with.
So how is your relationship now with your father and with your siblings?
You know, we have a relationship that's truly unique, Warren. There is so much trust. I mean, we have a lot of things together. We have a business together. We have a building together. And there is never a question about money or some of the stuff siblings fight over when they get older. Like, there is never even a thought if one of the other siblings are not being fair. I mean, no one ever asks a question. It's but on the flip side, you know, my mother, when my mother passed when I was young, and my father never really talked about it. And I think growing up, that now that I have kids, I can feel why he did that. He was trying to protect us from any kind of, you know, didn't want to make us sad as kids, and it was, you know, and probably in his mind, it was sad. So he kind of guarded us from all of that. And you know, when you become the parent, it's just amazing how much stuff flashes back into your childhood. It's life is really funny how it all works out.
The relationship with you and your family related to your business. Tell me about your business, first of all.
So I hit on the siblings a little bit, but I didn't hit on my father. We same thing with him. We have a really special relationship. Growing up, you know, he would challenge us, me, put us in situations that would always challenge us. Never really forced us into drag racing. He would take me to hockey, take me to baseball, then take me to the track. Take me to hockey, take me to baseball, and take me to the track. Mostly hockey and the track. A little bit of baseball, but I wasn't too good at that. Hockey I excelled pretty good in, and he kind of laid it all out there and would challenge us. He would put me in a car that wasn't very consistent because he wanted me to learn how to drive the finish line. He did that over and over again, and there was always, getting back to your question, the relationship is always a silent trust that is really hard to come by all the way around in my family. But go ahead, your other question.
No, the question was about the family business.
Okay, yeah, so fast forward to late 80s. We're in this house that I live in now. We're in a small garage that can barely fit one car, and my father decides to call his friend Charlie Bacola, who was really good with electronics, actually helped develop a patent for one of the alarm companies. Very intelligent guy. Started building practice trees in his home. And we go to the races. My father would write on the side window of the station wagon and shoe polish, practice trees for sale, $2.99, whatever it was. That's how it started. The demand, it was just going to the racetrack and people seeing that, and he would sell 1 a week, 2 a week, got to like 10 a week, and Charlie Bacola could not keep up. That's where my father would say he made one of the biggest mistakes business-wise, because he felt like he had some ideas, with delay boxes, and a lot of credit goes out to Digital Delay, a lot of credit goes out to Den & Bear. I'm not taking anything away from them at all. Everyone has patents for different things, but my father did have a lot of ideas with that kind of stuff, but didn't have somebody that can actually do it. So we became more or less a distributor for a lot of the electronics companies. And anyway, it started in the garage and with practice trees, and then got a little bigger with delay boxes. And I was in college, and that's when I kind of had to make a decision on where I was going. I'm studying business management. I'm feeling like I'm going to be something to do with finance in New York City. But as I got to be a junior and a senior, and I was packing orders, and I started doing a little marketing, and I just naturally fell into the Biondo Racing Products business. And for 30 years going now, it's still going. We're not in a one-car garage anymore. We have a building in Queens. It went to Long Island, it went to New Jersey, and now it's back in Queens. And throughout it all, throughout 26 of the 30 years, it was always run out of a house. Nobody really knows that. Now, the last 4 years ago, we moved it back to Queens, and we bought a building, my brother and I, and we run it there. But for 26 years, you know, we have this image as a big mail order company. No, we had Sparkle suits in one bedroom. We had my father had a big house that he lived in by himself, and we used every bedroom for stock, and the basement was all the offices. Like I said, he was always very frugal, and we didn't have to pay any rent for the business. And that's where we are today, Queens. And now my brother's a lot more into it than I am now, because I branched off into A, having a family, and B, spring fling, fall flings. And but my brother, Rich DiLorenzo, and Rich Schreiner are all in with it, and it's doing well still. I just have a small part in it now.
So you said early in this that your dad was a hero. What kinds of traits or qualities did you get from him that are part of you?
Well, you know, as I was growing up, they always say you're gonna be like, you know, you're gonna be whoever you're around the most, whichever parent, you're probably gonna absorb a lot of that. And I went to 4 years of college, St. John's University, and I learned more sitting at a desk across from my father in 1 year than I did that I could apply to life. Now, this is just me. I'm not saying anything wrong with college, because it was a great, for many different reasons, it was great. But I learned more being with my father and just listening to him on the phone, and I picked up a lot of. I'm a lot like him. My brother and sister will tell you that. I'm probably more like him than my brother is. I picked up all the good and the bad. I picked it all up. I picked up his, he has a lot of integrity, and I feel like I picked up a decent amount of that. On the flip side, if you pushed him too far and you got on the wrong side of him, especially 2 or 3 times, and he lost his trust in you, you're done for life. And unfortunately, I kind of picked that up too. You know, he was the type of guy that if you said one thing and did another, that was his pet peeve, and that's kind of my pet peeve too. I don't care, you know, even in our spring flings or when we talk to a lot of racers or in business or in life, or my children, hopefully I can instill in them that it's okay if you make mistakes. It's okay if you do something wrong, but don't, you know, preach and act this part and action show another part. That's probably the biggest thing I picked up from him, for good and for bad, because, you know, you're supposed to forgive and forget certain things. It's like the 2 or 3 strike deal. Like, once it got past 3 strikes with him, with somebody, for what I just talked about, and I picked up that for good, for better, for worse, really.
Well, I know this is starting to sound like a therapy session.
Yeah, hey, it's good. I probably needed it.
But a lot of times we don't say to people what we want to say to them until it's too late. So what would you say to your dad?
Well, everything that I'm saying to you about him being a hero is what I should say to him, really. He's had a stroke, so he's 83 now. He answered the phones at Biondo Racing right up until the night of his stroke. Dad, before that, Dad, why don't you go play golf? Why don't you go on a vacation? No, I'm good. Never. All he wanted to do was help out the business and help out us. His life always seemed to be dedicated towards us, more than himself. Very unselfish. So he had a stroke 2 years ago, Warren, and doctors didn't think he was going to make it. He did make it through. Had some really challenging times, and I watched him go through it. Just before I came here, we had to rush him to the hospital because he had an infection. And he's still doing okay. He's partially disabled, needs some help. But little by little, when I sat in the hospital with him the other day, I'm starting to talk about these kind of things. He's never spoke about this kind of things openly. Like, our actions were always showing it, but our words were never. That's the way we were brought up, and that's the way I am, and that's, my wife unfortunately has to deal with that. I'm not a big, use the love word a lot. I mean, I'll show it to you, but I don't say a lot, but this has taught me, watching him go through this stroke has taught me, Warren, sitting across from him, start to bring stuff up. I haven't quite told him he's my hero yet, but when I get home, I plan on doing that. I did write it once. I haven't said it, but I wrote it in it was a school deal, and they talked about, you had to fill out like a questionnaire anyway. So we're getting there. I need more therapy, I guess.
Well, if it was a school deal, that would have been 30 years ago, so you need to say it more than once every 30 years.
Yeah, but I didn't say it. I wrote it.
You wrote it. Well,
that's the problem.
But
yeah, it's
now you can say it.
Yeah, and when I was in the hospital with him the other day, he's to the point where he's lived a full life, and he basically looked at me, and I never, again, this is going to get pretty deep, but I never understood when people say, well, I'm ready, I've lived a full life, I'm okay with dying. He told me, looked me right in the eye after we were getting ready to get him into the ambulance, and he said, I might be dying. And I'm looking at him, okay, like what? He's looking right in my eye. You got to come to grips with this, Pete. You need to come to grips with it. Tell me you're going to come to grips with it. I don't want you to be sad. I lived a full life, and I'm happy, and I'm ready. And I never really, and I'm not saying he's dying, but he's lived a full life. And all I said was, I said, Dad, when God's ready to take you, He'll take you. I really didn't know what to say, but that's what I said. But he's a tough guy. He's doing well, and he's hanging in there.
Well, mortality is a tough thing, and we can kind of touch on that a little bit too as we talk about the Flings, because you and your partner Kyle have been together a while, and Kyle's been going through quite a lot. Tell me about your relationship with Kyle.
Yeah, it started in '93 as my brother met him, and he came to Indy, and I won Indy that year. That was my first national event win, and we had my father was there, he was there, it was great. And that's where we met, and we had so much in common. We both loved sports. We both had the same kind of mentality, drag racing, and here was a East Coaster and a West Coaster who always talked probably kind of smack about each other, like, oh, he thinks he's good, he should come to the East. He was probably saying the same thing about me. You know, I'd read National Dragsters, see Kyle, oh, he won. Oh, look at it, he won with a couple of 30 lights. Huh. You know, that's really what was going on as a young, cocky, you know, I wouldn't say it out loud, but in my head, that's what I'm thinking, and he was the same way. But we met, and we raced together for a little while. We became good friends, and then in 2010, we were on a family vacation with my wife and his wife, and it just happened just like this. It was January 1st. We were drinking some wine, and we said, why don't we do a bracket race? we started talking about here's how it started. We started talking about what races are we going to go to in 2010. And we really couldn't really pin down a lot of races that were fun. The Moroso 5-day deal was kind of faded back and wasn't really popular. And so we just said, you know what? If there's nothing out there, it's like out of necessity, right? There was nothing out there that we saw we really wanted to go to, so why don't we put something together? And we were crazy. We started at guaranteeing $20,000 each day, and we started in April of that year we started, so we didn't have much promotional time. We really didn't know what we were doing, except for common sense and writing it down on ideas on a sheet of paper, but that's how it all started.
So did you ever imagine 10 years later that the Fling series, the fall Fling and the spring Fling, would really be the standard for how to do a bracket race right?
Warren, I couldn't have imagined a lot of things that happened in the last 10 years with this Flings. You know, I'm the type of guy, and Kyle is too, we keep our head down and we work hard, and we really don't dwell in the moment. But now that you look back on it, and it was the same way with myself racing, I never was a guy who, like, if I won a race, I always, all right, what do I got to focus on next? Just my personality, and we were the same way with the Flings. As it was growing, we were just always looking forward and never really dwelling on what was really happening. And, you know, it did become the standard, and I'm proud to say, you know, we thought outside the box. We were the first ones to do door cars and door car versus door cars, drag races versus drag races. Now that's universal, and I think that's great. Stuff like that, stuff like cutting the track short to 1,000 foot. Now it's cut to 8th mile. But we thought outside the box. We worked hard, and no, I would have never expected it. Especially after the first year. The first year was a bomb.
So what was a bomb about it? What do you remember about it that you is glad that it's done? And
I'll never forget being in the Best Western hotel with my wife the night before we were opening up the gates. The forecast was 80 to 90% chance of rain every day. We didn't even think about canceling. Purse guaranteed, didn't think about canceling. But I was to the point where I just wanted to have the opportunity to try this. And I said to myself, nobody's going to show up. Who's going to come? And my mind really started playing on me. And I walked out at 5 o'clock in the morning towards the highway. The hotel was by the highway. And just watched. And I just said, can I please see a rig? Please, I just want to see one rig. That's how bad it was. I was like, I feel like we might only have a handful of cars here. This is going to be crazy. So that sticks out of my mind. I came back into the hotel. My wife, we started she's praying and saying it's going to be all right. We'll do what we have to do. But yeah, so of course the weather people were wrong. Didn't have a drop of rain. It was the worst forecast you could call for. You could I mean, you'd never want this forecast as a race, putting on a race promoter or whatever. And didn't rain a drop, lost $17,000 that event, and worked our tails off. And we were taking the banners down, and we said, I looked at him, I said, Kyle, you think we're ever gonna see these banners again? And he goes, probably not. And I said, yeah, I can't, you know, I can't see it. But here we are 10 years later, probably 18 events under our belt now.
With the Flings, like you said, you've done a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity to set the standard. If there was anything you could pick out that you're most proud of, what would it be?
That's a great question. I'm most proud of the late nights, the not giving up, the 3 o'clock in the morning where I would be just dead tired, and I would continually just work on different aspects. And I would go to basketball games, Knick games, Yankee games, and I would try to come up with ideas that would make things different. So I think, to answer your question, Warren, the thing I'm most proud of is that we didn't give up after the first year, and how hard we worked, and you know, how two best friends and now my wife, it's hard to run a business with your wife. It's hard to run a business with your best friend. They say don't mix that stuff together. We do it, and we have a chemistry. My father called it synergy. He told me a few years ago that you and Kyle have the best synergy I've ever seen as far as complementing each other, and I'm really proud that we were able to get through a lot of turmoil and keep focused on working hard and not giving up.
Well, from my exposure to you, one thing I would never question is your work ethic. Does that apply to your entire life?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes my wife would say to a fault, but you know, once you have a family, Warren, things change. So I really was nonstop working on the Fling, mostly and some Biondo racing from 2010 until we had Severio in 2014. Once you have a family, you have to know how to flip the switch, and I'm still learning, but I'm getting better.
Let's talk about racing a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I've heard you're pretty good.
Yeah, well, if you ask Kyle, I'm a has-been, but.
Well, I knew that you'd won world championships, but 7? Is that right?
7, yep. Between Kyle and I, we have 7, and he has 0.
Tell me a little bit about those championship years and how that all materialized and what life was like back then when you were chasing championships.
Yeah, so from the first championship to the last, things have changed quite a bit. I'm not sure people that don't chase the points or haven't chased the points realize how much effort you really put into that if you roll in. It's same as parenting. Like, parenting can probably be easy, but if you're really all in and really care about what you're doing and your kids, it's not that easy. It's effort, and I wouldn't change it. But very, very similar to racing. When I chased it, the first couple of championships, first 6, I was all in, nonstop racing. I mean, I'd hit the practice tree. I would, whatever it took. I mean, I took it. That's all I had. I mean, not all I had, but that's how deep my passion was. It felt like it was all I had. Fast forward to my last championship, and I knew I was about to have Severio, and I knew I was gonna, I'm not retired by any means, but I knew I was gonna, racing was gonna take a back seat, and it has since 2014. And so I gave it everything I had that year, knowing it would probably be the last time I chase it for a while. And unfortunately, I won it. So it felt, they all feel great, but that one felt better than anyone because I knew that that was going to be it for a while. I'm not going to have the time between the Flings that were growing and the family that was starting. I wasn't going to have the time to do this for a while, and I didn't want my last shot as I got closer and closer, and I was going head to head for the championship. I didn't want to have to think about how I dropped the ball, or I wanted to be proud of how I finished, and I was, and I'll be back at it. This is in our blood, and this is my passion. I really love everything about racing. Again, I went to St. John's University. I thought I would go down the New York City corporate road, end up selling racing products, end up meeting a bunch of nice people, end up starting a race promotion business, and end up doing well racing. So yeah, I wouldn't change a thing, and I'll be back. My wife even said, "Why didn't you race this weekend?" I said, "I'm just not. I'm not ready. Like, I want to work on it right now. I want to help Kyle here. I want to spend time with him, work on the spring flings, and for the remainder of 2020, our game plan. And when I'm ready to flip that switch again, I'll be out there."
So with your wife, Emily, right?
Yep.
With your wife, Emily, when you were chasing championships, how did she fit into that? And did it affect your relationship in any way?
Well, we were only dating back then, so we married. We married right around the time I quit, right before I. Yeah, so we married 2 years before I stopped chasing championships. So we were dating back then, and then we met for 5 years. We were dating when I was chasing, and then 2 years we were married. But even those years, I wasn't chasing it every year. I was on off pretty much. From 2009 to 2014, I would go all in, and win or lose, then I would take a step back, take a breather, focus on businesses and everything else in life. But and dating Emily, but she's a racer. We met at the racetrack, so you know, everyone called me really lucky. You know, you have a beautiful wife. She races. She likes racing, but that really isn't why I'm so lucky. I'm more lucky that she absolutely understands when I go to chase a championship. Or when I'm out here helping Kyle this weekend. She has 2 kids, and she's parenting them solo right now. Well, she's at Samantha Coughlin's house and they're having fun. But I'm most lucky that she is a great mother and a great wife. Forget racing. That's what life's all about, right there.
Emily's a pretty good racer too. I understand the first time she was in the seat of a super gas car.
Yep.
At a national event, she won.
Yep. Yeah, she's a darn good racer. We were on our way. That's one of the most memorable weekends I'll ever recall. We were on our way to Bristol, and she wanted to try super gas. And actually, I was racing so much, and she really wasn't racing much. She moved up to New York. She changed her whole life. Came up to New York, left Florida for New York right in the dead of winter, by the way. We tore right to the wolves. But yeah, we went to Bristol. On the way down, what some people don't know is on the way down, the hardest part she was nervous about was doing a burnout with a line lock. She didn't have much experience. She always ran dragsters, no line lock in dragsters. So didn't start out too good. She started out with, she thought it was going to be a foot brake deal, like a streetcar burnout. And so the whole way down, we're in my friend's minivan, and I'm YouTubing while I'm driving. I'm handing her the phone, and I'm showing, okay, this is how you do a burnout, you know, and I'm playing along with what you do in the video, visual, and me doing the action. You know, press the unlock button, pump the brakes. Well, when we got to Bristol, I thought we had it figured out. First run, she had the misconception that, and she was very nervous. I mean, a lot of people watching that fence, all of her friends, yeah, first national event, super gas. Never even driven this car before, by the way, before that. It was Anthony Bertozzi's 170 mile per hour Roadster. And the only reason I was comfortable with it was, I said, you know, we'll go with Bristol. Bristol's altitude, the horsepower won't be quite as much as sea level, and it will be a little more tame. And she's a great driver anyway. Does her first burnout, and she was under the misconception that she was hitting the gas, and it would go do that. Then instead of getting up, the tire getting up and starting to spin, she would just would walk out. After 2 times of walking out, because she was under the misconception that she was giving it too much gas, but the reality was you have to kick it good and get it spinning. So after 2 of those, the other guys pre-staged just about, and I just went there and I said, forget about feathering it, just put it to the wood and go. You know, let it eat. Well, she did just that. She did a pro stock burnout to 60 foot in the super gas car. I'm not kidding. I walked up to the starter. I'm trying to think. I can't remember. Lyle? Is it
Mark?
Mark.
Yes.
I walk up to him. I said, I'm sorry. Won't happen again. You know, I know we're making this guy wait and everything. Anyway, she pulled it together, had a decent run. First round beats David Tatum, and 2 days later, she won. I was under the tower in Superstock final. She won. She was 00. She started like that. This is how she finished. She was 003, took 009 stripe, and won the final over Marvin Benoit. To this day, when he sees her at PRI shows and stuff, he's, you know, doing one of those. And to add to it, I won right behind her. At that point, I knew there was something special there, and a couple of my friends said, you know, why didn't you propose to her right then and there? And that's not really my style. I'm not a big, I wanted to do it, you know, I separate kind of racing and, I don't know how to put that, but I wanted to do it my own way, our own way, and I did it in Florida, in West Palm Beach. And that's my, but yeah, that was her race. She won the first national event she entered in Super Gas, and that's the only national event she entered in Super Gas, by the way, since then.
So she's got a perfect record in Super Gas.
Don't touch it, right?
Right, just leave it alone. They call you the Terminator. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't really have much of a choice what they call me when they have the microphone in their hand, but it started with Louis Bloom. According to him, I was 19, 20 years old, and I was walking in front of the tower watching my father race, and I didn't talk much. I was very shy. At the time, I was lifting weights and had probably a cut-off shirt. Looked like a true New Yorker, you know. And he just said, yeah, here comes Sam Biondo, and there's his son Peter, and he just started saying, hey, you know, I come to terminate you, and started like mimicking me like I'm some sort of robot, that I was winning a lot racing and I don't talk much, and that's how it started. And I don't mind it. I mean, I think it's a really good compliment. Could be called a lot worse.
People say a lot of things about you. One of the things they say is you're one of the most natural, gifted drivers behind the wheel, where you can climb in any car and have a legitimate chance to win. How do you feel about that? Well,
there's a lot of people in this sport. There's Jay Coughlin, there's Luke Bogacki, there's I could go on and on, the Richardson brothers, that can be defined as a natural. I feel, you know, I don't know how you earn a title. You earn a title like that, but it feels good. It does, because like I said, I'm not one to dwell on success as I've had it. But when you look back and you hear things like that, it's you realize what you did. But in my mind, I do have a knack for drag racing. I feel, and I love it, but I think I work a little harder than some of the other guys, and that's, maybe it is somewhat talent. I like to say I'm a natural, and but I think a lot of it comes down to work ethic too, or just effort in general, really.
Well, tell me about preparation. I would have to think, to be at the level of success that you're at, there's a lot of mental preparation that goes into it.
Yeah, and it depends on the stage of life I was in. You know, back in the early 2000s, I had a practice tree. That was when Moroso 5-day was big, and that was before crosstalk. So you had, you had a lot. To win a race, you'd have to cross over some of the rounds and look at the opponent's top yellow, and some of the rounds look at your own top yellow. So I was a guy who, on Friday nights, I would set the practice tree up Friday afternoon out in the yard. I would take 20 shots on my side of the tree, 20 shots crossing over in the sun. I would wait till it got dusk, do the same thing. I'd wait till it got dark, do the same thing. When I got to Moroso, I was very well prepped, and I was the guy who, if I was crossing over, I knew how to take 15th thou out of the box with the incandescent bulbs and the way the sun was hitting. I was setting up red really from my last hit, but I was confident. And those are the little things that go a long way in this sport. So I was a little bit of a racing nerd, I guess. My friends were partying, and I was, now don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun too, but when it came time, when it was time to go to Moroso, that was it. And I was whatever I needed to do. And when I got down there, it was, people were partying and stuff. I wasn't the type to go out drinking. I'd have fun as much as the next guy, but I wasn't not gonna, I can't race as well with a hangover, especially now. So, you know what? There's a time for everything, and that's not that. I wasn't there wasn't time for me to do stuff like that.
Well, you talked about time and being your time and such. You mentioned that you've had a couple of situations on the racetrack that tested you.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that and what you went through and how you got through it.
Yeah, so I would say part of the reason that I have done well in racing is that I always push a little hard to see where the limits are. Like, I'm not afraid to go red, aggressive. Well, that also, you could pay your price with that mentality, because there was it was one time that I remember specifically I was driving my brother's comp car, and that aggressive mentality and that, you know, do whatever it takes and push yourself to the limits and push the situation to the limits, backfired and almost killed me, really. Like, I drive my brother's Beretta. I never driven it before. It was a comp car that left like a super stock car, and whatever, the preload might have been off a little bit. Doesn't matter. During the 3-time runs, it moved around a little, and I had control of it. Rule number 1, don't get overconfident. Rule number 2, realize that a track can be different at night than it is during the day. And rule number 3 is, you don't win at any cost. I know some of the NASCAR people say, well, there's a line there. So after manhandling the car, I got this. I'm running first round. It's Pomona at nighttime, and at nighttime, that groove, it's very important you stay in the groove. I'm racing a guy, Wolf, I think his last name was, in a Pro Mod type car. Turbo car, I believe it was. Whatever it was, it didn't make much noise, and there's a reason I'm saying that. I leave, the car goes up in the air, gets out of the groove a little bit. I'm like, all right, I got to give up. My gut instinct was, that's it. Well, my gut instinct was right. What was wrong was that this is first round. I don't see or hear him. I'm at half track. Half of the car is still out of the groove. And instead of getting it in the groove and kind of going right into it, I just went right, what's the word? My adrenaline kicked in, and I just put it to the wood. And I didn't see or hear him because his car didn't make much noise. It was one of those silent shh. And lucky for me, he hit the tree good, because in time runs, he was dead late. The reason I say that, when I got back on the throttle, I crossed the center line, hit the wall hard. You could Google it. Peter Biondo Pomona crash. Horrible. Nighttime, flipping over, on fire. He missed me, would have killed me. I mean, he was coming by at 200 miles an hour. So thank you, Mark Wolf, for hitting the tree. Good that run, because if you would .1 or .2, I'm dead. I'm not sitting here right now. So when anybody questions, I mean, I don't want to get into anything too religious here, but I will speak on behalf of what I've been through. And I have proof that somebody was watching over me. I flip over, I'm upside down, the wheels are still spinning, the car's on fire. All I see is fire under the hood. How am I going to get out of here? The fire is coming. Well, my driver's side door, coincidentally, or somebody was looking out for me, which I think, was off. So I was out of that car before it went up into flames. Anybody that ever questions, is somebody watching over you specifically? Absolutely. And I had a torn MCL or ACL, whatever they call that, and I was fine. But if you watch the crash, Peter Biondo Pomona crash, looks really bad. But yeah, that's where yeah. And the safety safari came down, and the first thing I said to him was, "I'm sorry, guys. I knew it was my fault." I mean, people can say, "Yeah, it was Pomona track. Cody Lane, I would think it was Cody Lane, crashed a few pairs in Superstock in the same lane. Yeah. You can blame the track all you want, but I have to be aware of the track that I'm on at the time. It's not the same track as it was during the day. And I wasn't, and I paid the price. And I said to guys right away, I said, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry for this. It's all on me. I screwed it up. I should have never got back into gas.
After you went through that incident, did it change your philosophy? Did it affect you in a way that you might have been afraid to get back in the car?
Yeah, I think you always learn, especially from a almost tragic incident like that, and it shapes you a little bit towards where it kind of knocks you back down where you need to be a little bit. But I'm always still pretty far up there as far as pushing the limits. That part will never change. Hopefully, I can just keep it below that line where I can. It works for me by helping me be aggressive and win races, but I don't cross the line where I, make a foolish decision like that to try to win a round.
You're older now. If you look back and you could talk to your 21-year-old self,
I would say a lot of things.
what would you say?
First thing I would say is, don't be so damn shy, because I was very, very shy. I had a lot of friends, and we went partying and stuff, but when it came to asking girls out and stuff like that, I waited, here's a good example, I waited to 2 days before my prom to ask, and the girl absolutely, the whole class knew that she had the hots for me, whatever you want to call it back then. And she was a good-looking girl, Dolores, Spanish girl, beautiful. And I just was too shy to ask her. 2 days before the prom, finally I said, I got to pull the trigger. Went up to her and, would you come to prom with me? So that's the first thing I would change. Just have fun with life. I would tell my son, have fun with life. Be more like Kyle. I mean, if I could grab something from Kyle and his persona that I can, I'm sure he can say the same to me, that we both kind of, he'll probably tell you, we both kind of feed off each other, and he's one extreme, I'm the other, and we kind of bring each other a little bit that way. Well, be more like Kyle, have fun. That's what I would tell a 21-year-old. I mean, not as much fun as Kyle probably had when he was 21, but maybe 50% as much fun.
Probably not as much fun as Kyle's having today.
Yeah.
Of the things that are a part of you, what do you want to pass on to your son?
Everything that I've learned, everything that my father's passed on to me that I'm proud of. The integrity part. I feel like my word is good. I want to pass that on to him. If I promise you that I'm going to meet you tomorrow morning and do this interview or do another interview or something, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna set an alarm and a backup wake-up call. Have your actions be as good or better than your word. I'm not big on words, man. I'm big on actions. Show me. My wife, she, and that's a female persona really, but every time she hangs up the phone, she tells her mother that I love you. I say, what, she forgot from yesterday? And we would joke about it, but and she says, well, maybe you can grab some of that. And I was brought up where you just show them. And I'm not saying either one of them's right or wrong, but that's me, and that's what I want. I think it's so much more important for my son that I could pass on to him is be a man of your word, and your actions are more powerful than your words. And they always should supersede your words. I don't know if supersede is the right word, but they always should be higher above your words or outperform your words. Just same thing with the Flings. I feel like Kyle and I always say this, and I'm proud to say it, even if it comes out a little bit cocky, but I feel like we under-promise and over-deliver. And that's always, that's it. That's how I am in life too. I feel like I think I grabbed that from my father, and I would hope my son would grab some of that from me.
What's your future look like? What's out on your horizon?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, as much as I love the family business, and as much as there's so much sentimental attachment, as much as I know the business very well and I can be a great asset, I feel like my time there is, I don't feel like that's my calling. I feel like the spring flings with Kyle, the raising the family, and being all in, literally like my father was, I feel like those two are my calling. And I did one drag racing school. That's when I did the one drag racing school, I left New Media Dragway, and I called my then girlfriend, now wife, and said, I never had so much fun in my life and made money doing it. That was my exact words. So that and the spring flings and family, that's where my future is, as far as I could see it.
Anything you'd change?
You know, when you do any mistakes you make, I'm the first person that's really hard on myself. But you did it. There was a reason you made that decision at that time. There was some, you know, and there's a lot of things I would change, but at the time, I made the best decision I could with what was dealt with me. Would there be anything I would change? That's a really, I would say, you know what? Even any mistakes I've made, even if I've done wrong by anybody or whatever, it makes me who I am today. And no.
We all draw our inspiration in life from a lot of different sources, and sometimes it's people that are close to you in your life. You've been friends with Kyle forever. Tell me a little bit about Kyle and how he inspires you.
Kyle has always inspired me for a lot of different reasons, but for those that don't know, Kyle has had a battle with cancer, to say the least, and he's been winning that battle, and as far as I can see, he's going to keep winning that battle because of his attitude and the way he approaches it. His inspiration, watching him go through what he goes through, Warren, and the way he handles himself and his attitude really puts everything in perspective, and is, for instance, for what I've watched him go through the last 2 years, stage 4 cancer. The first doctor gave him, I don't even want to say what the first doctor said, but it wasn't good. 6 months later, gets a bad scan, now the doctor tells him, you know, not looking good. Flips it around, has a great attitude, calls me up, tells me he's going to be fine, he's just got to focus and put his mind to it. I'm telling you, has an attitude, has the energy of somebody, of a 20-year-old that's not sick. Watching that and watching how we were working together at Galat, I see a correlation. We're on the way to Galat, Spring Fling 2020, whatever, a month ago. Forecast is the second worst forecast we ever had. Usually, we would really be hung up on it, like, man, you know, we work so hard for this, we go to start at PRI, we get all these prizes, and we got it all together, we got the staff all coming. We're not can't race in the rain. But I found, not only did we work really well together, but it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't nearly as big of a deal, the rain. We laughed about it. We started laughing at the forecast, said, can you believe it's this bad? But we're going to find a way to make it work, because we always do. And a lot of that is basically you find a way to beat cancer the way you have, this is a piece of cake. We'll find a way around this. And that is the biggest inspiration that has changed my perspective on life. And I was at the spring fling this year in Galat. Anything that was thrown at us, not a problem. We're going to figure it out, because Kyle can figure cancer out and he's beating it. And this is a piece of cake compared to that. So that's my inspiration, and that's how he has changed me in the past 2 years. He is amazing how he's handling this. And he's doing well right now.
He is doing well, and it's amazing how much support there is out there in the entire racing community. Everywhere you go, people know about Kyle and his fight, and how much love and support there is out there. And you know, it's a testament to a great person.
Absolutely. And to that point, there's a reason, yeah, the racing world reached out and absolutely showed a support level that I couldn't have even ever imagined. But when you really look at it, he has always been there for everybody else, to a fault. I mean, to the point where, you know, sometimes he's at a spring fling race and a guy asks him to help dial him in, and he'll go out, look at his logbook for an hour, and we'll be scrambling. I'm like, yo, where were you, man? We had this happen. I was helping that guy. That's the type of guy Kyle is. And that all came full circle when he got sick. And all the years that he put everybody else first, now all these people were putting him first. And that's just how life goes.
It's almost a natural connection for you, since your father was that way and putting you first growing up.
Yep.
And now you've got your best friend is the same way.
Absolutely. It's the older you get, the more you realize how things work themselves out in the ways you would never expect, but they work themselves out. It's call it divine intervention. Everybody has their own religious beliefs, but if you treat people right and you work hard, that's what I want to instill in my son. It's everything else will work out. Love your family, treat people right with integrity, have good values. Everything else will come to you if you stick to that, even when it feels like it doesn't. I had a pretty rough winter. Everybody has had a lot of rough days and months with this COVID deal, and watching Kyle go through that, watching my father go through that, what he's going through, and trying to be strong for my family and show that face that my father showed me, and for good or for bad, I put on that strong face just like he did for me when I was young and he was going through stuff. I never knew it. Well, I try to be strong for my family, and it was hard. It was really trying couple of months, especially when you factor the COVID, the sickness of Kyle and my father, and but like what I was getting at was, at the point, it seems pretty dark at that point, but and you feel like at some point like you're never going to see the light. And here we are. It's June. He's doing great. My father's still hanging in there and doing well for under the circumstances, and we're in Sonoma, California, and there's drag racing going on. There's your light. And I have a beautiful wife, 2 young kids who are absolutely the most fun. They're hard. I'm 49 years old. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. You guys do that math, and now I know why people were intended to have kids at 30 and not 40. But you know what? I wouldn't change it. I worked my butt off then when everyone else was raising a family, all my friends, and now I'm raising a family, and everything else is taking a back seat.
Earlier in our conversation, you kind of shied away from the subject of faith, but it sounds like you still have. You depend on your faith, and it's been put to the test.
And absolutely. The older I got, the more I saw how God works things out for you even when you don't expect it. Whether it was the door flying off that Beretta that let me escape that fire, whether it was the other accident I have at Orlando when I went past the finish line, lost my brakes, and was in the wilderness trying to figure out how I'm going to stop this thing. picked a small tree, no kidding. It was an oak tree. Anybody knows anything about an oak tree, it's the hardest tree you can hit. Well, that was the best thing that could have happened because it stopped me on a dime and I didn't go through any big trees and rumbling around. And yeah, it hit on the right side of the car. If you saw a picture of the car, again, you would say there's no way he walked away from that. I walked away, again, when they took me down there and showed me the tree that was still standing with my bumper mark on it, and you look at the car and you replay the whole thing and you say, how did I hit the oak tree? How did I survive? But the whole time when I was getting ready to go into the forest, back that's what they had, it was way down there at the end of Orlando there at the racetrack. I remember looking up and saying, all right, I'm going in for a ride. And it felt like, Warren, it was probably 5 seconds, it felt like 5 minutes. I grabbed each seatbelt and I just said, God, help me. And the whole time I was like, I'm gonna be fine. I don't know why, but even when I crashed the Beretta, I'm gonna be fine. Someone's there with you. So yeah, have a lot of faith. And the more you have situations like that, you know, they say with faith you should have the faith before, you know, you have to believe in the faith before you see it happen. And I did to a point, but when you start seeing and feeling stuff like that, there's something special there.
Well, all in all, you can say you've lived a blessed life.
Yeah, in my 49 years, I'm sure a lot of people can say this, but I've had a lot of ups and downs, and again, I wouldn't change a thing.